All right, welcome to everyone. Tony, nice to see you come on. Good to have you. So this morning we're going to talk a little bit about preventing a fall this winter. My name's Erin. I know a lot of you here and some of you are newer to me. I own a company called Vintage Fitness, and we do these webinars, free webinars every 6 weeks or so, all on different topics around seniors' health and wellness. And thought that this is a perfect opportunity as the weather's cooling and Mike mentioned that there's some freezing rain in the forecast tonight. This is a great opportunity for us to talk together about preventing falls. And I'd love it to be interactive. So if you do have questions or comments or ideas, because you found something that's been successful for you, I'd love for you to jump in. So Vintage Fitness, we only work with older adults. So all of our clients are 65 plus. Our oldest client right now is 98, which she's absolutely amazing. Clients do achieve their health goals with us. It tends to be slow and steady. So we make small changes that can result in huge progress over time. And the company was started in 2005. So we've been doing this work for almost 19 years, I guess. So the webinar is for you if you've had a fall, if you often feel quite unbalanced, if you're worried about falling, if you're interested in the latest scientific research about the most effective ways to prevent falls. So I did you a favor on this webinar. I read this book, which was super helpful and very scientific. I felt like I was back in university because after every chapter, there was about 6 pages of references. So I'm more than happy to lend it to you if you would like to read it. But I really, I've been teaching this work for a long time, and I wanted to get the latest scientific research so that if I give a piece of advice, I can tell you what scientific work that advice comes from, and get a bit granular with certain things around falls, exactly where they fall, because I think a lot of us have heard the generalized advice around falling in the past, and I wanted to add a little bit more value to that. So if you're having a hard time sleeping, I will mail it over to you because it's very good, but oh man, it was dry. Okay, so just to set things up, there's a lot that goes along with getting moving, getting walking. It's and how we stay balanced is complicated. We have our sensory inputs, things like our eyesight, our ears, if we're having any vestibular changes as we age, our peripheral sensations. So we need to actually be able to feel in the feet and the ankle properly to prevent falls. So any issues with that area is a problem. There's the central processing. So is our brain actually processing those inputs properly? And then the response. So is our body ready? So if number 1 is good, number 2, sensory processing is good, are we strong enough if the message is getting through properly to act on it? So I mentioned this just because fall prevention is really multifaceted, and it's multifaceted because staying balanced is a lot more complicated than we probably think about normally. So there's a lot of conditions that can cause problems to all these inputs. So eyesight can deteriorate as we age. There can be changes to the inner ear canal, the crystals in the canal. There can be damage in the ear that will impact that sensory input. Things like diabetic neuropathy in the feet, where we're losing some sensation in the feet, that's a fall risk. So any issues with sensory input can cause problems. Then there's issues with that secondary central processing changes. So dementia, in general, we tend to have slower reaction times as we age, but that can be trained. I mean, you're not going to have the reaction time of a 20-year-old probably, but you can get quicker with practice. Medication can really affect how we process. There's certain depression medications, for example, that can impact that. Alcohol misuse can really impact how we process things, and then conditions like Parkinson's. So really, let's not try to think about, I have the gold star 1-pronged solution that's going to prevent all falls. If someone tells you that, that's not true. I mean, it really is a complicated system, and there's just a lot of different components to staying balanced. Okay, so again, this information is based off this Falls in Older People book. I referenced it at the beginning, and I can send you that link. So these kind of statistics and percentages are coming from that book. So if you're just joining us, uh, it's called Falls in Older People, third edition. Um, who falls most often? So interestingly, this was new information for me actually from this book. 30% of Caucasian older adults that are 65 plus fall more once or more than once every year. So 1 in 3, and that's true in Canadians, and that's the statistic we hear, right? 1 in 3, 1 in 3, 1 in 3. When you look at the scientific research as this book did, cross-culturally, it looks a bit different. So 9% of Japanese men and 19% of Japanese women reported falls every year. And that's on page 6 of this book. And they kind of went on to say, why is that? And their balance is better. That was kind of their conclusion. Some of the Caucasian participants were stronger, but the Japanese participants in this particular research study just had better balance. And we'll get into some of the things they were probably doing in a few minutes. And then in China as well, 18% of Chinese older people reported falling every year. So, as if Caucasians, our statistics aren't looking great if you fit into that category. We also are in colder temperatures. So Mike mentioned there's some freezing rain coming in tonight. So colder temperatures will correlate, I would say, to falls. And researchers think that's probably people hurrying. They're rushing through things. And as we age, we also have slower responses. So it's the two things together that would cause a fall. The third would be less activity. So sometimes in colder weather, we don't move as much, and that causes problems with our strength, and that's a risk factor for falling. And people who have fallen are at increased risk of falling again. That research would show that over and over again. And we'll get into the reasons why as we go. So as I mentioned, we had a few new people joining us. If you have questions, feel free to unmute and ask. It's very casual. Again, my name's Erin. If you can also use the chat as well, and I'll try to monitor that. Okay, again, I mentioned at the beginning, I was going to try to get granular on falls because I think a lot of us have heard the generalized advice on falling. So where do seniors fall? Because I think people get this a little bit wrong. So 56% of the time it's outside the home. And this is more often in community dwelling seniors, so people that aren't in a retirement residence. And often it's on a level surface. So people think, oh, I only fall when there's an uneven step, for example. That's not necessarily true. A lot of this is self-reported. On the chair and the ladder, not a huge. Getting out of bed, 3%. On stairs is 6%. And the injury when people fall on the stairs tends to be a lot greater, as you can imagine. And in the shower, about 6%. So outside the home and on level surfaces is when most people fall, most seniors fall. Yeah. So falls happen, and this is a bit of obvious, but falls happen when we're walking. And I say this because it's a little bit of a bugbear for me when I walk into seniors' residences and they have fall prevention classes and they never get out of the chair because they're worried about the risk of them falling. But people fall when they're in movement. They don't fall when they're sitting in the chair unless there's something else really serious going on. So you need to train to walk properly. And there's a few gait exercises I'll show you in a minute. So 50 to 70% of falls occur in older people when they're walking. And walking too slow or too fast, so that hurrying or rushing, may increase your risk of falls. And the walking too slow, what can happen is people aren't, they're walking slow enough and cautiously, and they're worried. They keep their feet closer to the ground. They're not picking their feet up properly. And so that they're not clearing any small obstacles that may come up. Which is one of the reasons that walking too slow, you're just not a confident stride. You're kind of shuffling a little bit, and that is a fall risk. you think you're being cautious, but you're not looking ahead. You're not looking what's in front of you. You're not realizing what the obstacles that could be in your way. There's also a risk with restricted range of motion at the ankle, knee, and hip will cause gait changes. So an example of that could be at the ankle. So people, as they age, they sometimes lose the flexibility in their ankle to lift their toes up and drop them down. So that's called dorsiflexion. And we have to dorsiflex in our ankle to walk properly. So one thing, as you're listening to webinars or reading your book, dorsiflex, just lift the toes. One toe, then the other toe. Try to keep that range of motion in the ankle because that's an important part of walking. Hip replacements, knee replacements, sometimes what happens is you just get a change in gait and it will restrict range of motion at that joint, and that's a risk of falling. So making sure you're walking well will help reduce the chance that you'll fall. Guarded stepping and people afraid of falling. So we talked a bit about that. People kind of hunch over a little bit, they look down, they shuffle their feet. That's a risk of falling. And then you should be practicing stepping over obstacles. So, if you're in a comfortable space, you're going for a walk and you have a friend there, you have a walker, you're comfortable. I'll show you a video in a minute, but you want to be able to maybe practice stepping over an obstacle, stepping onto a curb, so that when it happens and you're confronted with it on your regular walk, it doesn't daunt you and it doesn't cause you to trip. Is this all making sense so far?
Yes.
Yeah,
really
good.
Illuminating.
So there's a concept that I want to introduce you to if you haven't learned about it before. It's called postural sway. And there's a video I'll show you because it's easier than explaining it. But really, it's the boundary where the body can maintain its position without changing a base of support, meaning without having to take that step forward. So if you have a really big, a small postural sway where it doesn't take much to make you take a step, research would say that's a big risk of falling. So let me just show you. This is it. So this fairly young man's postural sway envelope. This is how far he can go forward and back. His feet are working, his ankles are working. So if you don't have any postural sway, then any little change or problem with the balance is going to make you take a step forward. And if you don't have the agility to take that quick step forward to catch yourself, that's when falls happen. So it's worth doing some postural sway, like just practicing that, maybe with something in front of you. How far forward can I go, to the side? What's my postural sway? And can I look to increase that a little bit? Again. So home hazards. Again, the research studies would suggest that about 80% of older adults' homes have at least one fall hazard. And this is the statistic I found quite interesting as I was reading the book. 30% of people that rated their homes as very safe had more than 5 hazards. So I think what happens is that people fall proof their house, and then over the time, the random Christmas gifts and various things get all cluttered in there, and it all of a sudden becomes not safe. So this is a good opportunity to look at your home. 60% of falls happen in the afternoon. People are a little bit tired, but still active in the afternoon, which is what the scientists in that particular study thought that was the reason. When people do fall at nighttime, they tend to happen in the bathroom and on poorly lit stairs. In terms of home hazards, you want to avoid thick pile carpet and furniture with splayed legs. You want to try to get furniture that kind of lines right up, as opposed to kind of having a tripping hazard out the side. Pets can be a tripping hazard. So if you feel like the pets are often underfoot, get them. I know my cat would hate this, so I'm giving advice that I don't know if I'd be able to take, but get them a collar with a bell on it, just so you can hear them coming if you have a pet that tends to be a tripping hazard for you. So other home hazards, rushing to get the phone, although most of us have cell phones, so they're right there, but just take your time. Don't rush through things. do try to think about using a fall detector. In a few minutes, I'll talk about the different types of fall detectors and ones that are scientifically proven to detect falls better than others. Do get sensor lights at entrances. I don't leave things on the stairs. Leaving things on the stairs is a big fall risk. And I do this in my house. I think, oh, I'm going to take this up the stairs later. Really try to avoid that, because if you don't notice it, it's so easy to slide on it. Have a night light in the bedroom, and make sure if you get up, and most often, many of us do get up at night to go to the washroom, there should be a lit path to get you there, either in movement, so there's motion sensor, or you have a night light and there's a lit path for you to get to the washroom. You make sure also your bedside table can hold, if you're going to put your hand on the bedside table to give you some stability, make sure it can hold your weight. So make sure it's not a flimsy bedside table, that it's sturdy enough if you use it, that it can hold you. Use a coat with a rain hood as opposed to an umbrella. So that was another thing that came up in the research. The umbrella, for some reason, I guess it was just too many things in the hand, and it means that you can't bring your hands forward and stop yourself if you do have a fall. So keeping your hands free without the use of umbrella, if your balance is off, is good. The researchers also suggested considering having 2 pairs of glasses in terms of bifocals, just so that you're not having to kind of look down and up. If you've used them for years and it's not hasn't been a problem, that's probably fine. But it was one of the things that came up
I
in the
like that very much.
research.
I really approve of that. Two
So
glasses.
do you find that for
Yeah.
you that's better than bifocals?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So what type of exercise is best? So regular exercise, like I could quote probably 90 research studies that would tell me that regular exercise can prevent falls. There's just no reason to argue against it. Absolutely, exercise can prevent falls. Just walking isn't enough. Improving your walking is important, but the exercises that prove to improve fall rate would be any exercises targeted at functional abilities, like sit to stand or balance exercises, and balance exercises that you'd be actually doing. So stepping up and over something, reaching for something, practicing those movements. We talked about walking over an obstacle on your regular walking route where it's safe. Exercise with multiple components, like a balance and strength together, as opposed to doing just a standard bicep curl. Maybe you would do a bicep curl and you're up on one toe, so your one back heel of one foot's lifted. So you're incorporating, if you're working with a trainer, they should be doing that, incorporating multiple components. Tai Chi, which is a picture of older adults doing it there, that's been proven to be helpful to prevent falls. And then any exercises that help you improve your posture. So we talked about that postural sway, but also just making sure that your overall posture is good, so that when you do go for your walks, you're standing tall and proud as opposed to being hunched over. Any questions on the types of exercises? I have a couple of videos in a minute of specific ones that you can follow along with.
No, that's great.
Nope. Okay. So here's one exercise I filmed this morning, and it's called the clock exercise. So I'll show it to you.
Hi, this is Erin from Vintage Fitness. A couple of balance exercises that are really key for preventing falls for seniors. One's called the clock exercise, and modify it by having something beside you, like a countertop or a mantle. If your balance is very good, you may not need that. So you're going to stand up nice and tall, shoulders back and down, and you're going to go forward with one foot like you're getting to 12 o'clock, and 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, back. And then you're going to do the other side. So same kind of thing, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So you're going to warm up nice and small. To progress this, you might take a longer, be on a bigger clock, or you can go behind. So you're touching some of the numbers behind you. And the same thing on the other side. So your core is engaged to help keep you balanced here. And if you can, maybe lighten the amount of pressure you're putting on that reaching hand. It's called the clock exercise, and it's a great functional balance exercise for seniors.
Okay, so yeah, that's just an easy one you can do, holding your counter, holding the inside of the sink and the counter if you're quite off balance, but it really simulates that stepping and getting more comfortable with that postural sway. Most people could see the video. One person, Yon, I'm sorry that you couldn't see it. I will send you the recording of this so you could always look at that. And if you look at the Vintage Fitness YouTube site, it is on there as well. So that's an easy exercise. You can make this easier or harder by not using the support, making a bigger clock, or as I mentioned there, stepping the foot behind and over. That makes it quite challenging, but just a simple exercise that's functional for balance.
Hi, this is Erin.
This is another one, and this is just practice stepping up and over things. And you can do this anytime. You can do this while your coffee's brewing. You can do it, on a commercial. And you're talking on the phone to someone wherever. So here's another example of a functional balance exercise. Nope, hold on, let me go.
Hi, I'm Erin from Vintage Fitness, and today we're going to talk a little bit about preventing falls. So most falls happen, 50% of falls in people over 65 happen in the home, and they happen most often in the lounge and in the kitchen.
I can't
It
hear it.
links to things like pets. Pets are a big one, so I thought it would be fun to do a few exercises. The
Volume on that is not very
My
strong.
dog is
Okay,
cooperating,
I
so
can
I'll do
talk you
with
through
her,
it.
but obviously you can do it
So
with a block, or
essentially,
something else. So you want to think
we're just going to
about
step up and over the dog.
preventing falls that happen every day. So the step up and over with your block. If you're unsteady, make sure you have a solid structure.
Yeah,
beside
hold
you to
something if
stand,
you're
and
unsteady.
you're just going to go up and over again, up and over your block.
So I'm just stepping up and over the dog.
She's creating a good obstacle for
Core
you.
is strong.
As dogs do. So again, up and over. You're lifting up high enough if you don't have something in front of you. That
Yeah,
you're
lifting the foot up so that you're
nice
clearing
and,
the obstacle. That's what happens. People don't lift up high enough and they're not clearing it.
These are the kind of ways that falls happen, and your dog's going to think you're insane. So here we go.
Dog's going to think you're insane, yeah.
8 to 10 of them with our moving.
So, obviously you're probably not going to step over your dog. I just thought that would be kind of fun, but you could do it over a block, water bottle, anything.
Swooping.
Piece of tape.
Swooping down to get into a car, for example. So that's the other one you can do. Bending your knees. Again, keeping your core nice and strong. You're going to hinge from the hip here. You're not going to hinge from the bend at the knees, and you're just going to kind of swoop under.
So this is swooping under, because that often is a fall risk.
Again, another way that falls happen. The last exercise we're going to do is reaching. So you can grab
and this is reaching.
A block. Again, brace in the core, hinge from the hips. So I'll show you here. And you're
brace in the core,
forward,
hinge.
Bracing in the core, pulling your feet towards each other, but they're not moving anywhere, and coming back out. Reaching forward, pulling in the core, bringing your feet towards each other and back. So 3 really practical examples where falls happen all the time. Stepping over like a pet, swooping and to get into a car, and reaching forward and losing your balance. So try to incorporate those functional movements as part of your balance training.
So for that one, sorry if the sound was a bit low. We just talked about practicing stepping up and over. So you want to try to clear the obstacle as opposed to keeping the foot close to the ground. The reaching forward, you can reach forward, brace at the core and hinge at the hip so that you're not curling your back over, and then swooping down. So sometimes as people get into the car, especially with freezing rain, sometimes that can be a cause. People are uncomfortable with that swooping or ducking movement, and it causes a fall.
Most pets will try to stand up if you step over them.
Yes, except
Then
mine. You're right. To be honest, I just had my dog there because I thought visually it was fun. But I think to actually practice, you're better to have a block or something that won't move. But you're right. My pet's just she's funny. So I wanted to go. One of the things I wanted to talk a bit about was tech, because that's a newer area, and there's technology everywhere. So where is it in terms of preventing falls? So there's a couple of tech pieces. So do you remember that part of balancing was the sensory input, like the issues not being able to feel the feet or not seeing properly, and then the central processing in the brain. So some of these newer devices, they're not well researched just because they're so new, but they're trying to help with the sensory input piece. So there's something called Walk Joy for people with diminished foot sensation. So we talked about diabetic neuropathy. No scientific input to date, but essentially it's straps under the knee, and it just gives you that sensory input that if you don't have great feeling in the feet. So it might be worth trying if that's an issue for you. They also have something which sounds cool, but so it's a laser in the heel of the foot, which shows you a thin line that's perpendicular to the direction of travel. And this was designed for people with Parkinson's. Again, research is just too new to have real research around it. But if you have someone that's falling all the time with Parkinson's, then I mean, I would try it. But there's some new technologies coming out every year. So the other distinction I wanted to make is fall detection versus fall prevention. So the ones I showed before, they're actually trying to prevent a fall. Most things you see on the market is detecting a fall, which is important because especially if you live alone, you want to get aid quickly. You want to let people know that you've had a fall. This is an article I read from Forbes Health on August 23rd. There's two different types of devices. One are the wearable sensor devices. So they use accelerometer sensor. So they just detect that the speed at which the person moves to the ground. That's how they figure out it's a fall. So there's watches, there's pendants, there's things that you can clip on your belt. The research has shown on these, again, according to this Forbes article, that devices weren't closer to your center of gravity. So your neck, the pendant on the shoulder will detect falls more accurately than on the wrist. But there's a lot. I mean, the wrist is easy because you're wearing it on a watch. So I would consider the wrist one, but I'm just kind of giving you a sense of what the research is saying on this. There's also ambient sensor devices, which are video cameras placed in the person's home, which tracks your movement and can detect a fall. Advantages and disadvantages to each in terms of cost, in terms of reliability, in terms of privacy, because obviously video cameras, that's you being videotaped. So I think having a wearable sensor device depends on your level of risk of a fall, depends on whether you live alone, but I think it's a good idea to have a watch. A lot of the new watches, I was just looking at it with my mom, like even the Fitbit watches have some fall prevention. Do you guys does any thoughts? See anyone have fall prevention, fall detection devices that they found really effective that they use?
I've got a Fitbit 5 and it does not include that software. I'm just wondering if it's an app you can download.
We looked at it. I think the latest ones might have it because my mom's didn't have it either. And hers was, I can't remember which number of Fitbit, but I think the latest ones do have it. I think some of the Garmin ones have it on the earlier devices. I could do a bit of research and send that out. Which watches have it and which don't. Okay, so the key, these are the multifaceted strategies that we talked about for preventing falls. So you should be doing balance and gait exercises. You should get regular checkups, and if you're hesitating to get cataract surgery and you do have an issue with balance and you're a fall risk, get it. It will help. It will reduce your chances of having a fall. You need to improve the muscle strength, especially in your legs, and as well the mobility. We talked about dorsiflexing when you're sitting and reading a book, just keeping that mobility in the ankles, especially for walking. If you're concerned about cognitive issues, go and see your doctor. Make sure that if you do have a cognitive impairment that it gets assessed properly so you understand that. Manage your meds. So certain meds will impact your falls. I would recommend going to see your pharmacist if you're concerned about meds, and that would include any supplements that you're taking that are non-prescription, herbal supplements. Sometimes things can have a weird interactions with each other, and pharmacists are really experts in that. So if you're feeling any dizziness, bring your med block to your pharmacist and just say, this is all the things I'm saying I'm taking. I am noticing a bit of dizziness. are there any counter effects going on here? Don't let your fear of falling change how you walk. That's a hard one, probably easier said than done. If you're walking outside, using walking poles could be one thing that would help improve your confidence of walking. There's ones that have rubber nubs on the bottom. They even have like the snow tire version of that with some picks. So if you're concerned about falling when you walk outside, I would use poles. Wear the right shoes. And, you know, there's a whole chapter on shoes, and it's sort of that getting the sweet spot. So too much cushioning can reduce the amount of sensation that you get in that foot. So that's not always good. Like the double, like you're pretty much walking on a mattress, I don't think is super great. And then there's the other side where people are wearing slippers or no shoes. That doesn't tend to be good. So get somewhere in between, a good grip, but not too much of a grip for your shoes. Manage your home hazards. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Where you're going to be having your lights placed, not having clutter on the stairs, all of those things. You want to wear shoes at home. And if you really hate that idea, at least don't have open back slippers. So wear slippers with a back and a Velcro or something that securely closes the slipper, so that, because slippers are a risk for falling, for sure.
When I was first prescribed the use of a walker, I remember being warned not to overuse it because it may lead to overdependence on it.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on walkers?
Yeah, so there is a chapter in the book about walking aids, and that's exactly what the research would prove as well. So if you need them, you should be using them when you need them. But if you are overusing them, what happens is you can no longer go without. So when you try to get up from a chair or walk a short distance in the home, if the walker isn't there, then you're at risk of falling. So you don't want to over rely on it, but you want to make sure that, you know, in when you need it, you need it. I mean, that's fine. Walking outside, especially if you're a fall risk, a walker is a good thing, but just not over relying on it. That's the research would say exactly that is right. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And I would advise using technology to detect falls if you're at high risk. I mean, the technology is getting easier and easier, you know, just to wear on your wrist or wear a pendant. Why not? I think. Okay. Any questions for me this morning?
I think it's been a very eye-opening presentation, and thank you for it.
You're welcome. I'm glad. And I can send you, if anyone wants this book, I really am happy to lend it out. If you really are a scientist like Andrew or a professor of engineering, you might get through it a lot easier than I would. I'm happy to lend it, to mail it over to you. And if you want some advice on what exercises you should be doing or some support from our team at Vintage Fitness, feel free to give us a call. The website is just vintagefitness.ca. We can do work with you virtually on that. We can work with you in person. We have a couple of clients. I see Tony, whose balance has gotten better and better as he's gotten older, and he works with us virtually. Mike Miller, nice to see you. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. I thank you so much for attending. We had lots of people attend, and
Erin, I have one question for you.
Yes, yeah, sure. Hi, Ian. Hi, Tony.
Is there any research or what have you? Because most of our discussion has been related to what we can't affect, that is getting older. But do you have any information or any knowledge of a combination of getting older and having had a stroke?
Yes. So a stroke would, in terms of the link to falls, you mean?
Yes, because
Yeah,
stroke apparently does affect your balance severely, and having had a stroke and I'm getting older, obviously. But is there anything relative to a greater risk of falling because of that.
Yeah, the stroke, depending on the how much neuromuscularly the stroke affected, so how much of that one side was affected, stroke will increase your chance of falling. And the counterbalance to that is the same as it is for anyone, you know, making sure you're getting enough exercise as you are, doing your fall prevention. All of the same solutions exist, but there is a link between stroke and falls. Yeah. I can send you, there's more specific information in this book on stroke, Tony. So I'll send you an email on it, okay? With the specifics around strokes.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. All right.
Erin,
Nice to
could you-
see you
Erin,
guys.
could you-
Oh, hi,
could you
Michael.
Send the name of the book. I didn't see the name.
Yeah.
Of the book.
Yeah, sure. I can give it to you now, or I can send it. It's do you have a pen there, Michael? It's just called Falls in Older People. Risk factors, strategies for prevention and implications for practice. 3rd edition. And I really don't mind lending this out if you want to read through it. You may not want to buy it. I think it's about $100, but I'm happy to lend it to you, Michael. It's no problem. Just drop me a note.
Thank you.
Excuse me, who is the author?
So it's edited by Stephen R. Lord, Catherine Sheridan, and Vazi Nalthinian, but each chapter has its own author. So they've kind of pulled on the different topics, but it's edited and curated by those 3.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Do you have any
welcome.
problems with us sending copies of this to relatives who are not part of the Vintage Fitness?
No, send away. I'd love for the more people, the better to listen. Absolutely.